Right, thanks again for watching today. We'll be back with another one of our videos. So this is actually going to be our second video on a topic that we think is very important, which is two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And again, I've gathered some people to have a chat about this from the HBP group. So we've got Darren Jacklin, one of our account managers at HBP, Tony Pearson, our operations director, hello, and Danny Palmer, who's involved in a number of our installations and project management on the IT side of things. So I think a lot of our customers will have seen Danny out and about putting in projects and looking after them for a number of years.
Hello.
So two-factor. So before we get into what we want to talk about today, which is kind of the objections of two-factor in particular and what we see in terms of why people aren't doing it, Tony, do you just want to give us a quick overview of what two-factor is and how people can understand it if they haven't come across it before?
Yeah, so two-factor or multi-factor has been in people's personal lives for many years, probably 10 plus years. You'll know it from when you log into your bank. So if you're HSBC or Barclays, you now have to put a username and a password in, but you also have to have a second factor of a device, normally like a little mini calculator device where you put a PIN code in and it generates a second code for you of which you put in. And that's really what the second factor multi-factor means. It's not relying on just a username and password. There's another second factor that you have to authenticate against effectively. So that now is being transposed into the business world and works in exactly the same way. You can have what we call a token, which is a little device, mini calculator, as they look like, or what's more commonly used is an app on a phone, so a smartphone app or on an iPad, where the app will generate the second factor code for you, or in some of the more smarter ones, it will simply do what we call a push notification. So it pushes a notification to your phone saying, are you logging in? You press yes, and it lets you log in effectively. So that's really what we call two-factor multi-factor authentication.
Okay, and so why should people be using that at the moment in a nutshell?
So what we are seeing, it's certainly very prevalent at the moment, and has been becoming more and more prevalent over the sort of past few years, is basically what we call credential harvesting. So somebody out there will get your username, get your password, and then be able to log in to your IT network with those credentials. And the reason why it's become more prevalent is because people are out there credential harvesting now. So they'll basically send a blanket email and you'll see them day in, day out saying, Darren Jacklin shared a file with you, click this link, and it asks you for your username and password. That's somebody credential harvesting. The link doesn't exist. You put in your details and then they have your login details. And what's made it worse and significantly worse is the adoption of Microsoft 365 or Google or Amazon, because everybody knows where to log in. Everybody goes to login.office365.com. That is the same for every single user around the world. So the bad person, the hacker's already got that piece of information. He's going to know what your username is because it's going to be your email address, so he can get that dead easy. And like I say, all he needs is you to either give him his password through credential harvesting, or they could simply just do a brute force attack, which is basically they guess the password until they get in. So that now is massively prevalent. We see it day in and day out. And the hackers ultimately are trying to monetize that. They're trying to get some money from it. So initially it seems harmless, as in what they'll probably do is log into Darren's email account and send out loads of emails to everyone in his address book saying, click this link to credential harvest their details as well, to try and get as much information as possible. But what they're eventually trying to do is trying to turn that into some sort of monetization. So sit and watch Darren's emails and see whether he's got anything to do with finance and so forth.
Okay, so I think we spoke about it in our last video. It's one of the most common problems we see. It's got a relatively easy to fix in two-factor. So Darren, from when you're speaking to customers, what's the objection? Why aren't, I think, well, to be open and honest, one of the reasons we're doing this video is we think more people should be using two-factor. We think it's a great solution and something that fixes it, but in our opinion, not enough people are. What are the objections that you get? Why aren't people doing it? Because I'm guessing cost isn't probably one of them. It's not an expensive solution.
Correct.
So what is it that's stopping that happen?
So the two main objections that I've really really seeing that people have been speaking about is what's going to be the knock-on effect of this? How much more time is this going to take me to get logged in and to do anything? You know, how is it going to restrict me from doing my job? And the second one is, I don't want to put the application on my mobile phone because it means that someone's going to be able to track me, or they're going to follow me, or they're going to see what's on my personal phone. And you know, that's not the case in any way, shape, or form. They're the two biggest objections that you really see, and the easiest way to combat them is it is not an intrusive product in any way in terms of, you know, stopping you from doing any productivity. As Tony mentioned earlier, it can simply be a notification that gets pushed to your mobile phone. You push one button and it lets you in. It literally adds 2 seconds to the process of being able to do anything. And there's other elements which I'm sure Danny will touch on later, on how you can actually restrict these bits to be not happening every time, where it just does it for a certain amount of time or in certain areas, etc. And in terms of the,
well, let's go straight onto that, Darren, because that's key to bring Danny in there. Then, so that's what Darren's finding people doing. Danny, in real life, how does it go down? Obviously, you're taking it then from maybe somebody Darren's had a conversation with, taking it out to all of the staff who then have to have that installed potentially on their mobile phone or others. How does it go down amongst people? How easy or difficult do they find it?
90% of the time, I would say most people are fine with having it on the personal phones because it's not intrusive at all. A lot of people don't like having it on the personal phones because they believe it should be on a company phone. But I always see it as, you always have your personal phone on you, so why would you not want it on there? I mean, I use mine for work on my phone. And to be fair, most of the time, you don't even notice it's there. It's not going to affect your everyday to-day life because you register Office, you activate Office, you register Teams, you know, you do everything on your laptop. The only time that you'll ever see it really asking you for is if you ever try logging into the web version, which is what you want it to do. It's not designed to be always irritating you. It's there to secure you. So it just means even if you do have a weaker password, it doesn't matter because you've got your phone and nobody's ever going to be able to log in because they don't have your device. But for the most part, everybody's been fine, really. It's once you prove to them that it's not obtrusive, it's not going to calculate data, gather data, everyone's fine. It's not a big deal.
yeah.
And is there over time as well, as in people thinking it will interrupt their day because every time I log in, I'll have to get the phone out?
100%. But once you confirm with them and reassure them, it's not going to bother you every single day. It might be once a month when somebody tries to log in as you, and you know you're noticing that you're getting a notification. I always recommend, if you are seeing notifications and not generated by you, contact our support desk and we'll get your password changed straight away. You know, they're not going to be able to ever log in, but it's always nice to know somebody is trying to log in as you, if it's not from you.
Yeah. So probably a question aimed at both Tony and Danny in this respect. I think Danny mentioned 99% of people are fine with it. I think maybe one of the concerns is always that 1%, maybe that one person who's kicking up a fuss. I don't want it on my mobile phone, or I never carry my phone with me, and that can obviously undermine the whole process. What options are there for people that just will not have it on their phone and don't want to go down that road?
I'll pick that up if that's so. Danny, are you happy for me to pick that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things. One thing we can do in a corporate environment, and when we are back to the office, we can geo ring fence location. So if people are in the office, we can stop that two-factor happening. So if it's a factory worker that will never ever need to log in remotely anyway, or outside the business, we can make it so although two-factor is enabled, if it sees it logging in locally, it won't challenge you. It will never ask. So that's one element. The other thing that we can do, if it is needed, and it is needed on there, we can supply, or the business can supply, what we call a token to that person. So the token being, like I said, like a little mini calculator. It generates a code, and then obviously they use that instead of their mobile or their own device. And so they're the couple of ways round it. Like Danny said, the fact that the app has to go on the mobile, it's not an app that gathers data or sends data. It only generates codes. So it's not there to do anything other than that. and it can't be used for anything other than that. So it's a very low level app, doesn't take up any memory or any space or anything like that. But yeah, there's a couple of ways there. Danny, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Well, no, out of all the couple of, the hundreds of users that I've done this for, I've only had to geolocate and ring fence, like Tony said, a couple, and that's factory workers that never would log into their emails remotely. So, restricting it by their company's IPs is multi-factor in a sense, because you have to know the username and password and be in that location to be able to work. It's, there's ways around to achieving the same thing and for it to be just as secure.
Yeah.
There's just one other thing I'd just like to add on that as well, and we do get challenged and asked this. Well, do I have to enable it for all my users? If that's the case, if Darren doesn't want it, I'll do it for the other 90 people and I won't do it for Darren. That is a really bad idea, because Darren then becomes the weakest link in the chain. When you're enabling two-factor, you do need to do it across your entire estate. You do need to do it for everyone. Otherwise, Darren just becomes the target, the weakest link in the chain, and then they will infiltrate Darren and go that way about it. So it's certainly not a good idea to think of, well, I'll not enable it for Darren. That's something we would strongly recommend against.
I think likewise, do we get a similar sort of request sometimes where actually, well, can I just have the managers or the directors have two-factor and I won't worry about everyone else? Is that a similar sort of message?
Yes, exactly, because you would see that the directors, easier to track down, they're more visible out there, they're on LinkedIn and so forth, and they've probably got more privileges within the business. But again, it's the same principle. What we recommend is to do the whole estate, because otherwise the hackers will target the weakest link. And we see things like social engineering attacks, not necessarily just through email, but through phone call, where a hacker will build trust through going through the lowest level people first and then going up the chain. And by the time it gets to the FD, he trusts that all that information has been vetted and correct because it's come through 2 or 3 levels, and actually it's not. It's been socially engineered through it. So yeah, it's absolutely key that it's done in businesses and it is done across the entire estate.
Okay. So I think we're kind of getting to a point of saying that the benefits of what we're getting across to people here completely outweigh the inconvenience, which is maybe what the problem is, that people think that the inconvenience is going to outweigh the benefit. So how would you, Darren, recommend that staff, the customers and companies reassure their staff, who are probably the ones giving that feedback of, oh, I've heard about that and I don't want it? How do they reassure their staff who maybe aren't tech savvy and don't know what two-factor means and don't know what these terms are? How do they get across to people, actually, this isn't a problem, this is far better for the business in the overall scheme of things than it is for the 2 seconds it's going to take you to log in the morning?
Yes, it's a good question, Phil. So I had a customer that's probably got about 60 users all in all that this was going to be implemented for, and the finance director was thought this is going to be an absolute pain for all of these 60 people. I'm going to get earache from every single one of them about having to do this. So I put together a nice email for them to distribute out to the staff, explaining exactly what we're doing now. What it is, what are the risks, what are the main questions behind it. What does this really mean to me? What is this going to mean to me in the future? And he sent that out to the team, sent it out to the whole business. And as a result, I think there was one person that, from reading that and again, gathering that information and fully understanding what, why, and when, there was only one person that was still objective to it. And just going back to that comment that Tony made about the token, he was objective to it, so they bought a token. The guy started using the token, and at the end, he just got fed up of having to carry his token around. Remember that, his keys, his car keys, his house keys, his mobile phone, and he changed his mind and he took the token out and put it on his mobile phone because he saw how easier it is to push a button rather than type in a 6-digit code and everything that comes along with it. And back to your original question, it's awareness. And like I said, we've got a template that we can send out to people to send out to their staff, and I know we've got the marketing material that's there as well. It's just about advising, informing, and just making sure that people are aware of what happens and why, and planning it properly.
And I think in a nutshell, I think if people haven't seen two-factor before, the actual interruption, obviously I'm a user in this, but when I log into whatever it is, I get a notification at the top of my mobile phone screen. I press that, and then I press a big tick at the bottom to say, yes, it's me, let me in. That's it, 2 clicks. What must be 2 seconds. It really must do. And then I'm in, and unless, obviously we're working from home at the moment, so we haven't got that ring fencing kind of approach right now, but unless I leave my desk and I have to log in again, I don't have to touch that again all day because I'm in the system and I'm working. So
I think it's also just like trying to bring it back into their personal lives, explaining to them that they, as Tony mentioned earlier, you are using this. We use it every single day in one way or another. And it's just relating to all you've got to do is within your work environment for 2 seconds, exactly what you do in your personal environment, probably 15, 20 times a day.
Yeah, Darren's exactly right. I mean, if you wanted to buy something on Amazon, use your PayPal account, buy something on Tesco's, they're all two-factor. We do it day in and day out in our personal lives. But businesses just seem very reluctant. As we've said earlier, it's a very low cost, but has a very high impact to prevent against problems. And we do it so in our bank accounts, and we could probably spend on Amazon £1,000 quite easily. We're quite willing to two-factor that because it's our own money. Whereas a business, we could be talking about hundreds of thousands, millions, even billions of pounds that could be transferred at the fingertips of the FD or the finance person, and we don't two-factor it. It doesn't seem to stack up of why businesses are so slow at adopting this technology that we've got in our personal lives, when the scale of what could happen, and we see it happen day in and day out. It's not scare tactics, it does happen. People are transferring 20, 30, 40, hundreds of thousands of pounds to hackers' bank accounts on a daily basis, because the point is, once they're in, you might not know they're in, and they just sit there silently watching.
And so are we saying here that this is going to start becoming more prevalent in our personal lives as well? I mean, I know I've had notifications from Google asking me to set up two-factor, which I've done on my accounts there, but I'm guessing Facebook and places like that, do they offer it? Or if they aren't, are we expecting to see that come? Is that right, Danny?
It's in every application.
Sorry. Yeah, it's in every application. Without you even knowing it, it's there. Anybody that's got home personal accounts, whether it be on Yahoo, Gmail, Hotmail, Microsoft, I'd recommend anyone to set it up. I use it on all my accounts, and for half, you can use the same password. It doesn't matter. I know for a fact all my accounts are secure, and I know if somebody is trying to log in, and that's the sort of reassurance we want, right?
What are the benefits around that as well? Just to point out, if you went with something like Duo two-factor within a corporate environment, you could use the same application and the same tool in your personal life to two-factor all your personal products. So there is a benefit there in having that on your corporate phone, because you can then use the same application to two-factor your Facebook, your Asda account, and everything like that. So it brings it all into one place, and you haven't got I've got this app for this app for that. So there is benefits in doing that in that respect.
Well, I didn't even know that, Tony. So these are worth doing just so I find out what I can do next as well. So there you go. I can tie it all in with my one Duo account now. Perfect. Okay. So if for any reason someone said, right, we're still not convinced, we don't want to do it, is there an alternative to this? Is there things that they could be doing that achieve part of it or close to all of it in different methods, whether that's different software or training or anything like that? Is there anything else people could be doing if they're not going to go down this route?
I'll pick that up. Seems everybody else is silent. Not to the same degree, no. I mean, yes, you could make, and the recommendation is make your password as complex as possible. You can do things like add email banners onto external emails. So when there's an external email coming in, it warns people that the link might not be safe, just to make people think before they click on that link, before they put in the details. Yes, there's advanced threat protection on spam filters and things like that should prevent against some of these attacks. But in answer to the question, Phil, no, there isn't. There isn't really anything that can really shut this door other than a second factor of authentication. Not effectively, not without hindering the business significantly, for argument's sake, restricting all external access to Office 365. So only anyone within the business can log in. Well, that's going to hinder the business, especially in the current climate when we're all working from home, if you restrict access just to one location, one machine. And there's still ways around it. So in answer to your question, unless Danny or Darren's got any, the real answer is no, not without causing major business disruption or massively changing how your business works. Or go back to the old days, unplug your router from the internet and have no internet access. You'll be safe then, but your 365 won't work.
I think Tony is correct. There is no, it's either on or off. We can, if everybody was working from the business like a normal, you know, pre-COVID, yes, we'd be able to restrict it down to the IP, but it's completely, it makes it so much harder. So, for example, if you're on holiday and you want to quickly check your emails, you've lost that functionality straight away because your emails are only allowed to be checked within that one corporate environment, and it just makes life a lot harder for the sake of installing an app on your phone.
Yeah,
I think for me, just on the closest thing that you could potentially get to having any kind of assistance to this is more about awareness and training. You know, making sure your staff know what to look out for, what is a risk, what differences between it. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all proofread an email. We're all going to at some point potentially click on something that we shouldn't do. So the training is that first part of it. If you're not going to do the MFA side of everything, but it's still not going to protect you, it might reduce the amount of threats that your staff might click on, but it'll never block it. But if you're not going to do the MFA part of everything, the minimum you should at least do is make sure that your staff are aware what to look out for. You know, what is a spam email, what is a spoofed account looking like, you know, so they've got some kind of knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, Darren. And also what we tend to do as part of the installs is also customize and brand the login page for 365 for their email domains. So the second that they come to type in their email address, their corporate logos or, you know, their banner page pop up. So I always say, if you don't see that corporate banner page and it's asking you to verify your credentials, like Tony said earlier, when with credential harvesting, just don't type your passwords in. It's, you know, if you don't see your corporate banded page, you know for a fact either the page isn't loaded properly or it's not the page that you should be on.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Right, well, hopefully I think we've covered a lot on another phase of two-factor there. I think the first one we talked about was what it was and why you should have it, but I think we've got into a lot here about kind of how to roll this out and hopefully showed some people that it's nowhere near as complex or scary as maybe people think when they first start thinking about two-factor. And also, from what you guys sounds like, we're going to have to live with it everywhere else anyway, so we might as well get used to it when it comes to work, because it's coming whether we like it or not, basically. So thank you everyone for your input, appreciate it as always, and we'll be back soon with another video shortly.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.